How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. First of two today, we are pre-recording our AFC East show after this, and we'll be dropping that during the new week, possibly Sunday. We'll let you know. With me, my guy, Mr. Mike Zappy, San Antonio, Texas.
What's up, man? How we doing?
Doing well, man. Feeling good.
Football's back.
Football is definitely back. We're going to hit on that towards the tail end. We're going to talk about the week that was in Major League Baseball. A lot to talk about. We also want to hit on not trading a certain terrific player that potentially could hurt the Los Angeles Angels. We're going to dive into some of that and see if we can make some sense of why trading him does or doesn't make sense. And Yankees scored some runs tonight. I don't want to get too excited. Perhaps that was an aberration, but I'll still take a win. But we're going to start it here. The week that was in MLB. Are the Angels wrong for not trading Shohei Ohtani? In my opinion, this is my banner, their slumps suggest yes. Zappy, your thoughts on this? They're doing what they do almost every year. After the break, they seem to kind of tank out, play to a level of mediocrity. And now you run the risk of not getting anything for the best, most dynamic player in Major League Baseball today in Shohei Ohtani.
I mean, it's like we said earlier. Are we really surprised? You know, I get the whole concept of going all in and trying to do everything you can to try to convince Shohei to stay, but let's be real. When we're talking about the city of LA, most people are talking about the Dodgers, not the Angels. And that to me is a team that I believe he really wants to go to, or at least is one of the top three teams. Plus, not to mention the Dodgers, while it was during the Mickey Mouse World Series, they still have a World Series championship recently, where the Angels have only been there and defeated the Giants in 2003. So it's been some time, but I just think that this was
2002.
2002. Thank you. I just think this was a bad move by the ownership. I mean, they had to do right by their fans and that organization and come to the realization that you're gonna lose him. You didn't do enough. You go and get Giolito. You go and get CJ Crone. And we're seeing right now that the chemistry is just not there with this team. And they are welcoming back Mike Trout, but it's not enough. And now they're going against the Astros this weekend, followed by the Rangers next to start off next week. They can very well fall out of the West and the wild card altogether in these next week and a half. So it's a tough hill to climb, and I think it's a pill that Angels ownership did not want to swallow, but I think reality is going to hit them very soon, and they're going to have a very pissed off fan base because, yeah, you don't want to lose Shohei, but you had the opportunity to go acquire a lot of young prospects and set yourself up, kind of the way the New York Mets did. If there's one thing that team did was they went and got themselves a good young roster that's going to set them up for a run in 2025. And that's what the Angels needed to do. They needed to go trade Shohei, get yourself 3-4 quality top 100 prospects, and get ready for the run in 2025. But, I mean, there's always the possibility that he stays. I find it hard to believe that he's going to stay there. I really do.
I'm with you, I would say, halfway to a level, because we said off air when we spoke about this topic earlier and something that we wanted to speak on the show tonight, that Shohei, not trading him, runs the risk of not getting anything. I think the holdup, and I said this even leading to the trade deadline, was that when you can't get a guarantee that a player like that, who's going to garner a lot of farm capital, it makes it tough to pull that trigger, to make the deal. And I think that was the ultimate holdup. I mean, I don't necessarily think the Angels are going to go out of their way to let people know that they might have been fielding offers, but I do believe that that is the ultimate holdup in a situation like this. Because while you do make a good point that the Mets moved on from Max and Justin, it's not the same thing in the sense that this guy's literally in the height of his prime, and it's going to continue to rise. Whereas you're talking about two future Hall of Famers who are not who they used to be, but they can still help teams win championships. So I think it's kind of like a rock and a hard place for the Angels. But like anything else, to your point about not seeing it realistic for him to stay, I tend to agree with you, because this is a team that has not been able to win even before he was there. Mike Trout has had a Hall of Fame career, marred with some injuries. Point to be made is they weren't able to win with Trout. They're not able to win with when they did the Pujols experiment. And now they can't win with Shohei and Trout together.
And not to mention overpaying for an Anthony Rendon, which was one of the most ridiculous contracts ever given to a player, in my opinion.
Yeah, Rendon has completely fallen off any semblance of the player that he used to be. I completely agree with you there as well. In the end, we're going to have plenty of time. I mean, shoot, this Shohei thing's going to probably go through the winter. Who knows? During football season, you might see Shohei sign with somebody. It might be even later than that. This might be a real dragged out affair. It really depends.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, I think it's going to be to the point where it's not necessarily going to be about the money, but I think it's going to be to what Shohei wants, how he wants to win 5 to 8 championships in the next 11 years. And do the Angels present that opportunity? I do not think so.
I don't think anybody presents that opportunity, because saying stuff like that makes it seem like winning championships are easy. The Yankees three-peated, won 4 out of 5. The most recent was, in terms of that dynasty, was 2000. That's how long it's been. Yeah, but the Giants didn't do no three-peats or no repeats.
No, I'm talking
the last bona fide dynasty was the Yanks. And you're talking over 2 decades ago. So to think that, I don't know. I mean, I get everybody wants to win, but I'm like, dude, 5 to 8, I don't give a shit who signs you. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think the only team we can agree that has been potentially been able to build a dynasty has been the Astros, because they have been there every year since 2015. But end of the day, they only have 2 championships to show for it, and which one of them we all know about 2017.
Yeah, and if the Astros don't win anymore, they could get looped in with the Atlanta Braves of the 90s or the Dodgers currently, because while Major League Baseball recognizes 17, I don't think a lot of other people necessarily recognize 17. So there are definitely a couple of ways to look at that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Shed. The Giants, they did win every other year. So while that's not a dynasty, because a dynasty is when you win 3 out of 4.
You at least got to go back to back. Like say if they won 2 years in a row and then had the third one in a 4-year span, then yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a place. There's definitely something to be said about that. But yeah, putting dynasties together in today's MLB or in sports in general, and damn near, yeah. I mean, in the NFL, it's the Patriots, and that is not going to happen probably again.
It's been 20 years since we last had an NFL dynasty, and that was the Patriots of the early 2000s when they won 3 or 4. And other than that, I mean, there's been.
I think you could make a case. I think you could make a case that towards the latter part of Brady's time in New England, it didn't have the same girth of winning 3 out of 4, but they were still consistently there.
Well, 28 to 3 is a big reason why.
Well, sure. I mean, you're talking. What was that? What year did they beat Seattle? Was that 14 or 15? That was 14, right?
14.
14, 16. They beat Atlanta. And what year did they get the Rams? 18. So they pulled the Giants right there. They did it every other year.
Every other year, yeah.
Yeah, not the same girth of what they did in the early 2000s when Brady had replaced Drew Bledsoe, but still, once again, something that you're not likely going to see. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs have the potential to do something similar or comparable. Time will tell. I think
they have to win this year. The Chiefs have to win it again
with the way free agency is. It's tough, dude. With the way free agency is, it's so tough to do any of that because if you look at the previous dynasties, whether it's your Steelers, whether it's your Niners, your Cowboys, it was a lot different. The way the league layout was much, much different.
And that's the one thing that blows my mind, where you would think that we would see dynasties more often amongst the Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, because of no salary cap, more off of the payroll you have and what the owner does and all that, and where we've seen that teams like the Marlins, the Astros, well, now the Astros have a ridiculous payroll, but at the time they didn't, the Rays, where the teams that are paying all this money, it's just not paying dividends for them. The Rangers have proven that otherwise, but they still haven't won the championship yet. So we'll see in the next 2 or 3 years if that paid out, if Chris Young going all out to sign Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, DeGrom, and so on and so forth to go get the World Series, because the fact of the matter is Rangers have never won one. So I'm sitting here patiently waiting for that one to come. But I just, when I look at the Angels and I look at if it's about winning 5 to 8, yeah, you're absolutely right. The possibility of that happening is very slim, especially in today's baseball with how much talent there is out there.
Yeah, dude. I don't care. I don't care if he goes to the Dodgers, the Giants, stays with the Angels, goes to the Yankees, whatever. They ain't no 5 and 8 years. That ain't happening no more. This ain't the 50s.
No, it's definitely not. And it's just ask yourself this serious question. If Shohei stays there playing for the Angels, they're not even the best team in the West or the second best team in the West. Possibly not even the third best team in the West.
They're top heavy where they have managed at different junctures of the last decade or so to have maybe 2 top 20 players, in this case 2 top 10 players, but not be able to put enough around what the star power and the star value has held. I mean, shit, if you want to take it back to the 1980s, you could say that the New York Yankees put together a few teams like that. I mean, Don Mattingly, who in a lot of people's estimations should have been a Hall of Famer, Ricky Henderson, Dave Winfield, Willie Randolph, these were all guys that played on the same team. So when you think that the Yankees didn't win a World Series in the 80s, you're like, oh my God, what was wrong with them? Well, we didn't talk about the pitching yet. That was undeniably an issue during the decade of the 80s. Oddly enough, the Yankees have a very dubious record for having the most wins in the decade of the 1980s, but yet do not have any hardware. There's only 2 decades the Yankees have done that in the 80s and most recent. Oh, right. So speaking of the Yanks, and I do want to make one last mention before we take it to the Yanks. You did say teams like the Red Sox, teams like the Yankees, big market teams, no salary cap. My answer to that is the luxury tax. I do think sometimes people don't totally look into the value of the luxury tax, and I've said this on previous shows. When you look at an Uncle Stevie who's a bona fide billionaire, you could kind of get away a little more with busting the luxury tax and not making it hurt so bad. But, when you got a Baltimore Orioles or a Tampa Bay Rays team that is kind of in that same division, teams that actually care about winning now, when you're essentially feeding your competition. So in that regard for the Yankees, and I've said this many a time, I don't think the Yankees are going to truly turn it around until they start filtering young talent, cultivating young talent again. That's how they did it in the 90s. That's how they had a dynasty. They haven't had one since. It's been proven how to do it. The Yankees have not been able to recapture that formula of what worked for Watson, Gene Stick, Michael. Showalter oversaw it in the beginning. Ultimately, Joe Torre and Don Zimmer took it home. All right, speaking of the Yanks, Karen Boone, as known amongst the umpire community, he is not very popular, talking about Aaron, with the Major League umpires. And this is what I got for this. Why the Yankees leaders' antics are becoming old and foolish. Listen, Billy Martin was one of the most animated people when he argued with umpires. But the thing is, Billy Martin was on a different level of manager of an Aaron Boone. When I see Aaron Boone making fun of Les Diaz most recently and that ridiculous imitation of him, calling a punch out, I just feel that it's gotten to a point where it's actually kind of embarrassing. I feel that it's kind of embarrassing The cursing's over, Brett. I'm acknowledging what it is. We'll be seeing Brett later tonight,
No,
and you'll
we'll
be
be
seeing
getting
that show later in the week.
we'll be getting a lot of cursing from Brett here in a little while, huh, buddy?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. We will be
Got
getting some cursing from Brett tonight on that AFC East preview.
a lot to say about those Patriots.
Yeah, lot to say about the Patriots. Not to say about a lot, but with Boone, it's like I feel that sometimes he goes extra on it, almost like that he's trying to prove that he's not a Cashman and Steinbrenner yes man.
That is the perfect way to put it. I couldn't have said it any better.
That's what I think as a fan, and maybe I'm wrong.
That's a good one. No, I totally agree. You know, it's funny because you get shades of Lou Piniella right now with this guy, and it's crazy because some of his antics are kind of like, really, dude. And when you put Karen Boone, I'm like, wow, that is perfectly said right there because he is. I mean, watching him go after Diaz the other day, I was like, come on, man, dude. Like,
I understand that he's not exactly graded as one of the better umpires, nor is Angel Hernandez. But at the same time, there has to be some level, some layer of respect that he still is an umpire. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that. I mean, let the players fight some of those battles. But I understand that it's your duty as a manager to protect your players. But when I look at some of these ejections with Aaron Boone, who actually admitted that he was embarrassed about the way he behaved, I'm like, eh. And this is a former player too. This is a former player. But John Johnson, definitely. Do I want to call him cynical or just flat out negative? I just think he's damn funny. Friend of the show and a fan of the Yankees. He basically just put it as like, damn, man, this guy hit a home run in the 03 ALCS, and we owed him a managerial job because of this.
Mm-hmm.
His knee injury also led to getting A-Rod.
No, and in Boone's defense, I will say a lot of this is coming from the fact that the expectations for the Yankees this year were so high, and yet we're seeing them sit at the bottom of the division. And a team that has been altered by so many injuries within your pitching rotation as well as in your batting lineup. We were just talking about how Aaron Judge is a guy that would, without question, be right there in the AL MVP scenario for this year if he did not get hurt. And quite honestly, would probably be flirting with around 45 home runs to 50 home runs if he hadn't missed any time. So you add up all those things with Stanton, Donaldson, Torres, what's his name, checking himself in, and you look at Severino having a down year, Rodon not having done anything.
Your all-star catcher from last year with a season-ending wrist injury.
Yeah, it's
Nestor Cortez, second time on the injured list.
It's when it rains, it pours, and right now, it's just I don't think Aaron Boone ever imagined a day where this team would be facing so much adversity this late into the season. And I mean, it happens, and that's the sad part. It's sports. Expectations are expectations until reality sets in, and you realize, oh crap, it's not going to be that easy.
As a fan, I'll be honest, I'm not overly blown away. Yes, I did pick the Yankees to win 100 games, and yes, I picked the Yankees to win the American League East. I made that prediction and that pick based on my belief that Aaron Judge was going to play 150 games or so. But when you go back to last season and when you saw the ineptitude of the lineup outside of Judge and how teams are able to pitch around Judge and exploit the Yankee weaknesses, losing Judge for 2 months, forget about all the other guys you named because they are valuable too. But he is the most valuable. Corey, our friend of the show who comes on here, has flat out said, Shohei is the best player, Judge is the most valuable. I couldn't have said it better than Corey, because when Judge gets hurt, everything goes to shit. The Angels can't seem to know who they are with or without Shohei. The only thing we know as fans is that Shohei's that damn good.
He's an incredible pitcher. That's the part we'll
but I don't think his presence has yet, how would you say, gotten to that point where you could be like, he affects the wins and the losses and the trajectory of a team yet. He hasn't had that impact to me. He's going to get hardware for an MVP. He's a phenomenal ball player. But Aaron Judge, in my opinion, is the true MVP in terms of what he means to his particular team. This season, I'm not going to argue that Judge should get it. He shouldn't. He missed too much time. But if Judge finishes with 40 home runs, I don't think that he'll get that far, given that we are in the second week of August. But should Judge get into the high 30s, I think that's a hell of an accomplishment, considering that he missed 2 months. And, more importantly, he's a guy who hits to all fields. I think that is the best knack of his game. He's a hell of a defensive outfielder as well. But can't say I'm surprised. I saw the writing on the wall in last year's playoffs. This is a Yankee team that needs a legitimate overhaul on so many areas. Yes, they won tonight, and I'm happy they won. Maybe they'll win tomorrow. Doesn't mean anything. They're not going anywhere. If they have a good August, they have a good September, they get in the playoffs, doesn't mean anything. In the Bronx, making a wild card don't mean a fucking thing to anybody. And if you look at the Yankees' history, we've only won once when we were a wild card anyway. And it was we've only won one series as a wild card. And oddly enough, the Yankees are the original wild card in the American League because the 94 season was supposed to introduce the wild card. We all know what happened there. We had a strike.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, sir. So to my recollection, and this is a long time ago, but if the 94 strike did not occur, don't quote me on this, but I believe the Boston Red Sox would have been the original wild card. Instead, it was the New York Yankees a year later in the epic series against, Ken Griffey Jr., Jay Buhner, Edgar Martinez. Jay Buhner, bro, one of the worst trades in Yankee history, getting rid of that guy for Ken Phelps. Yeah. But, that's, you hate trades, you love trades. Sometimes you don't get the better of it. I remember when the Yankees dealt David Wells to Toronto in exchange for Roger Clemens. Wells was coming off of a Cy Young caliber season, whereas Roger Clemens was as well. But Clemens' first year in the Bronx was not pleasant. He picked it up big time after that. But ultimately, what I'm getting at here, we can talk about this for a while, and I want to cut it now. The New York Yankees foundationally have a lot of issues, and I think the New York Yankees have to really get honest with themselves and say, who do we want to be and how do we want to build? Because it's been a long time since the Yankees have truly done that. Anthony Volpe is going to be just fine, but they need a few more.
Your mom said it best.
Hey, fair enough. Okay. All right. Ramirez for the KO. Tim Anderson appears to be the common denominator again. What do I mean by that? Tim Anderson always seems to find himself in some kind of shit. Am I defending Josh Donaldson for his ignorant comments when he was suspended, when he referred to Tim Anderson as Jackie, even though Tim Anderson referred to himself as Jackie first? No, sir. You do not lower yourself to that stupidity in the world we live in today. So Donaldson was wrong, and I was in favor of him being punished for that. I still think Tim Anderson's an asshole. Most recently, this thing here with Jose Ramirez. Ramirez gave him a fair warning, every fair warning. And whether you root for the Guardians or they're indifferent to you, one thing that I must say is Jose Ramirez is a professional through and through. This is a man that has taken less money over the years to stay in Cleveland. He is a loyal player. He is a leader. He takes a lot of pride in terms of the country that he is from, in terms of the player that he wants to be in terms of representing that country. He represents that country not just if we're talking about a tournament style World Baseball Classic thing. I'm talking about every day. He takes a lot of pride representing where he's from and wanting to be a good example for younger players. So when you, Tim Anderson, are leaning over him and you're doing like little Bush League bullshit, like pushing a guy off a bag, getting a cheap tag, it was coming. I think the thing that really I couldn't understand is that when Anderson was kind of, moving around like he had some kind of boxing background, I'm like, are you really sure you want to fight that guy?
Of course he did, because Jose's smaller than him. He underestimated
Yeah,
him.
but Jose, he definitely underestimated him because you talk about just a perfect punch.
That was, and a punch that he wasn't even looking. He just threw it and landed it right on the button, and down goes Anderson. One of the greatest sights I've seen. I mean, it reminded me of Rufnet Odor laying one on
Oh yeah, when
Bautista,
he
you
cracked
know?
Joey Bats.
Yeah, like that. But it was just, it topped it because he literally got knocked out. And then to see Tim Anderson trying to push his teammates away to walk off the field, but then he stumbles. It was like, you're not recovered there, buddy.
Needed their help, and I know somewhere Josh Donaldson was chuckling.
I think there's a lot more people than just Josh Donaldson that were chuckling
The
on
the
that
thing
one. But
is,
yeah,
Tim Anderson. It's unfortunate because when I think about Major League Baseball, and I've said this on previous shows, I think it's important to have inclusion to everyone who represents your fan bases. And obviously, African American ball players, their participation in Major League Baseball has been at a dangerous low compared to other sports like the NFL, like the NBA. Just making a couple of examples. In a couple of years, it's not far fetched that you might have more African American ball players in hockey than you do in Major League Baseball. And who the hell would have ever thought that could have been a reality? So when I look at a guy like a Tim Anderson, who is not as good as he was a few years ago, but for a while there, he was a perennial all-star. He was very identifiable as a black athlete in Major League Baseball who was pretty damn good for a while. But when I look at his antics and just his Bush League bullshit, it's so disappointing because I feel that African American fans deserve a better role model in Major League Baseball. You look at a guy like a Curtis Granderson who retired a couple of years ago. He's been an ambassador over the years. Even
the perfect ambassador is Mookie Betts.
Mookie Betts is awesome, and definitely a better example, even if we're just talking about performance, let alone the person. But I think what I'm trying to get at is Tim Anderson has kind of shown his colors over the years, and I'm not very impressed with his overall behavior. And I'm sorry, dude. If you have the audacity to say that you are the Jackie Robinson of this era, you are really out of touch with the sacrifices and the hell that man went through so that you and players like you can get paid the way you do, can get on the same traction the way you do. I'm sorry, you couldn't be any more out of touch if you have the audacity to compare yourself to Jackie Robinson. I think it is like the epitome of just utter ignorance.
Yeah, it was a pretty big insult because in today's day and age, there might be a handful of players that I could sit there and say, yeah, he's comparable to a Jackie Robinson. And Tim Anderson is just not one of those players. Should never be mentioned in the same sentence. Just that's
there were some ball players on different levels that I think you could compare to Jackie over the years. On some metrics, not all metrics, Ernie Banks. Some, not all. If we're talking speed, just utter speed, it goes without saying that Ricky Henderson's in the conversation.
100%. And Ricky was talking about just.
Yeah, Ricky's the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of the game, and he broke Lou Brock's stolen base record. Lou Brock. There are some similarities in his game to Jackie, but there's only one Jackie. Just like there's only one Ruth. Just like there's only one Bonds. Nobody said you had to like any of the guys I named, and maybe there's one particular one that stands out that a lot of baseball fans don't. But you can't take away the thing that some of these guys are truly generational and truly belong in their own lane. It's stupid. Say he's an inspiration to you. That's cool. Say he's an inspiration to you. Just like there's only one Clemente. You know what I'm saying? There have been plenty of great Puerto Rican ball players after Roberto Clemente, but there's only one Roberto Clemente.
Mm-hmm.
Thurman Munson's not the greatest catcher of all time, but there's only one Thurman Munson. There's only one Carlton Fisk. And when there's one Thurman Munson and there's one Carlton Fisk, you're going to get a fight, and it's going to be better than that one.
That brings the question, though. Would the day ever come where we see baseball adopt the hockey mindset to allow two guys to duke it out
Well, the
Because
umpire didn't want no part because the
no,
umpire was like, "Man, fuck
that's
this! I'm not
exactly
getting punched."
why. I mean, he was right there. He sees Tim Anderson drop the gloves, and the dude was like, "Nope, not this is not happening. I'm gonna get out of the way." Like he approached it like he was on the ice, and it was awesome to see. I mean, it's not.
I
Not
just
good
think
for
it's
baseball,
hilarious
but
that he was the true antagonist even after the fact because I do truly think that as far as it was going to go, is that Ramirez was going to talk his shit to him. I got one for you. September 12th, 21, we went for the 9/11, 9/12 games, Dorney and I. Yankees won on 9/11. I've mentioned it on previous shows that year in Citi Field. The next day, there was almost a team fight. It was a weird night. So Judge left the game with a really bad migraine. He was a non-factor in the game. Giancarlo Stanton hit 2 home runs. Francisco Lindor outdid him with 3. Mets ultimately won the game. But between accusations of sign stealing and just both teams kind of going the Bush League route. I'm not defending either New York team in these instances, but we're sitting on the right field, kind of in between right and first. And when I saw Joey Gallo kind of hulk up like he was ready to go to town, and then Giancarlo Stanton go, I said, you know what? We might hit like shit, but I know we could win this fight. When I saw Giancarlo and Joey Gallo together, I was like, damn, those are not 2 dudes that I would like pick out and be like, I want to fight these guys.
I know, right?
But Gallo would be the one that I'd be more worried about because Gallo always had that kind of crazy look to him anyway.
And he's got the reach.
Yeah, he's definitely got the reach. All right,
Yeah,
so we have discussed. Okay, this is a good take on Brett's part. Nolan Ryan is the ultimate brawler. Robin Ventura, he whipped his ass.
I was going to say Robin Ventura learned.
And Robin Ventura is no punk either.
No,
he's not a punk. He's just a guy who lost a fight.
He got put into a chokehold, and Nolan went to town, and it is still one of the best highlights ever in baseball, in my opinion. That's not my biased opinion because I'm a Rangers fan and I'm a huge Nolan Ryan fan. It's just it's an awesome thing to see, and it's an awesome thing to show children because when they ask who is Nolan Ryan, you show him the pitcher and then you show the fighter. And
oddly enough, when I was a kid, my first introduction to Nolan Ryan was actually from my stepfather, who showed me some old videos of the Mets of the 60s. And seeing how Nolan Ryan was a small part of that team, and I don't think the Mets truly knew what they had, because early on in Nolan's career, he had trouble with location. And ultimately, you're talking about Tom Seaver was their ace. But that's actually how I came to know who Nolan Ryan was. And obviously, as I became a baseball player and watching baseball and seeing him get the 6th and the 7th no-hitters, it's pretty remarkable. 7 no-hitters. Once again, we keep talking about there's only one. There's only one Nolan Ryan. There is literally only one Nolan Ryan. Yeah. Before we get into the NFL and some of this KD talk, we're going to turn this over from some humor to something that is actually quite on the other side of the spectrum, rather serious. Our thoughts on the outcome of the Henry Ruggs verdict. We spoke about it early today. This is what I got. While I think there is it's a tragedy on so many levels, the Ruggs family gets affected. The victim's family gets affected. But the thing that bothers me about this particular case is that, you took a life. There's video of you on the concrete, on the sidewalk, almost looking somewhat like a victim. And when I saw him weeping and this and that, he wasn't weeping. I can't say why he was crying for sure. I mean, he knows he fucked up. I think that goes without saying. But personally, I don't think there was true contrition about necessarily taking a life. I think the true contrition comes down to himself. Oh, I fucked up my football career. Mental health, which I take very serious. His lawyer exploited that angle to get a lesser sentence, up to 10 years, possibly out, and 3 up for probation and 3, parole and 3. This is a young woman who can never come back.
No.
And then when I think about who Henry Ruggs says he devoted his career to, and to see that you did something on that, it's just mind blowing on a lot of levels. Young people do dumb shit. Listen, do I think a life sentence was necessary? No, not at that age. I do believe that there could potentially be some sort of cutoff because of the age variable and because of the stupidity variable. You know, you look into does this person have priors? Are there other issues? But I think the thing that will never sit right with me is that you're literally sitting on the sidewalk watching somebody incinerate. There's no other way to put it. That car blew up, but it didn't blow up immediately. I'm not saying that the girl or the dog could have been saved. And I'm not saying that I didn't do dumb shit when I was a kid. But I have a hard time believing that if I did something like that and I saw a car on fire, I'm just going to sit on the sidewalk and watch it burn, knowing there's a person in there. I have a hard time believing that I could do that.
Yeah, it's my big issue with it is, look, I understand he made mistakes.
No doubt.
I mean, I'm guilty of doing similar things when I was younger, but as a professional athlete, you're held to a different standard and you have zero excuses. When majority of these NFL teams, Major League Baseball teams, NBA, whatever the case, has avenues for these players to take to avoid this exact situation. I mean, if you were getting paid multi-million dollars to throw a ball, catch a ball, whatever the case may be, you're knowing that your professional sporting career is going to be short-lived, because we know the average lifespan for most NFL players especially is around the 3-year mark. Nothing is ever guaranteed in sports.
Yeah, everybody talks about the legends. Not a lot of people talk about the guys that make it, stick around long enough to hopefully save some of their money. But it's just, this is the crazy caveat for me, Zappy. In the event that he is released in 3 years, he's still a very young man. If this guy goes back to the NFL, I mean, dude, this is a weird one. So let's go back to Ray Caruth. This is a different scenario with Ray Caruth, who basically,
wife.
Not to mention that he ruined his son's life because his son has so many struggles neurologically.
Yeah,
because
that's a very good point.
So essentially, you affected 2 lives. I do believe that he has had 2 decades to think about what he done, and I'm sure he feels terrible. The point is that he did his time. He didn't, while he masterminded the heinous act, he didn't pull the trigger. What Henry Ruggs did behind the wheel was essentially the same thing as if you would have just shot the lady.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially the same thing, because the vehicle essentially became a murder weapon. So the thought of thinking that in 3 short years he could be out, it just goes to show you that the legal system is still a joke on a lot of levels. Plaxico Burress didn't hurt anybody other than himself. And Plax, I think, did close to 4 years. He didn't even hurt anybody. He shot himself.
He shot himself because his gun was falling out of his pocket.
Yeah, he pulled the cheddar bob.
He pulled the cheddar bob, exactly. And it's, oh man.
And that dude did 4 years. 4 years.
4 years. And I mean, again, that's also going to come down to the state that it happens in.
And I get that. It does make you question if on some levels and layers, this has to be more. When you look at other countries, the country's law is the country's law. In the United States, everybody talks about presidential elections and how important it is. Me personally, I think the ones that matter are the ones that apply to your personal state.
Your governors, those are the ones that are important in my book.
Yeah, the president to me. I'll tell you, want to know the God's honest truth why I watch the debates? Because I want to get entertained. Get a good laugh. Because when I saw Trump and Hillary screaming at each other in Hofstra University, I was like, this is great entertainment. And then with Mike Pence, with that fly, I thought it was a fly in the house. So I took like my flip-flop off and like smashing my TV. I'm like, oh, that was on the vice president. Yeah, okay, hurt. Back to the seriousness of this, though. Listen.
No, it pisses me
I
off,
feel
man.
terrible for all parties involved because I think this kid's evil? No, but this kid fucked up and has to be held to something a little more than potentially 3 years. That I will say it again. That woman cannot come back.
Can't come back. She can't come back. Not to mention the amount of mental instability that her family is going to be struggling. Her parents, because as
Dude,
we
can you
know,
imagine seeing this guy back on the field? Like I don't even know on what planet. Like,
I don't think we'll see it.
see, that's the thing, though. I don't know.
I find it hard to believe that we would see. I mean, yeah, we saw Ray Lewis come back. We know he murdered
Other entertainers, and you got to do a little digging to truly look into some of these cases, because the thing is, other entertainers, actors, things of that nature, have gotten away with vehicular homicide, say, and have gotten slaps on the wrist. But and oddly enough, this is before some of these people were even famous. Well, that too. That always goes a ways. In the Ruggs case, I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what his money was looking like that young in his career playing on a rookie deal, but he was one of the higher draft picks. Ultimately, my point is, it's just crazy to me to even have that thought in my brain that he could be back in 3 years. I'm not saying he will. And I almost feel that the judicial system will purposely keep him long enough to just make sure that he can't play again. But I'm sorry, even a maximum of 10 versus a life, I don't know, dude. Jim Leyritz is another guy. He's out. Jim Leyritz got away with this shit.
I look at it this way. This is not something that doesn't happen. This happens daily. It's sadly, but it's the reality. There are deaths every day based off of drinking and driving and foolishness on behalf of the person behind the wheel. But a lot of these people don't have the luxury of. Ruggs had a 4-year, $16.6 million contract. That's a lot of money for a young individual. A lot of money. But it was enough money to hire a good lawyer, because if it was you or an I that was behind the wheel, a bunch of just two guys, we're getting at least 10, probably at least 15 years. Again, depending on the state. Here in Texas, it would have been a really harsh punishment.
But I'm going to take it a step further. We're part of the problem, us sports fans, and I'll tell you why. Because when we look at the news, I'm not saying you and me per se, I'm saying in general. When we look at the news and we see some schmuck that killed somebody on the road because he was drunk or whatever have you, there's no backstory. We don't know who he is as a human or she. We just know that they are regular people. But oddly enough, when you flip it into athlete-based stuff, I'm looking at Twitter today, looking at this Ruggs thing. And listen, I'm not saying I don't have empathy. I'm not saying that I don't feel for the kid too that's still alive. I don't wish that pain and burden on anyone. I know he's going to grow up. He's still going to have the opportunity to make better decisions. That's the whole point I'm making, though. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that we as sports fans get intertwined too much with, oh, this and that, and he's a human, and they're not that bad. And it's almost like certain fans, when I look at this shit, it's like they're rationalizing, oh, he made a mistake. Yeah, no shit. But it's so laughable, because what if that was your sister or your mother or your daughter? You know what I mean? And listen, once again, I'm not saying life is a weird place. There was a hate crime that went down years ago with a legend in my high school. He actually made a full recovery and got to a point where him and his assailant became friends. That is the most extreme result of something ridiculous like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say, life takes a lot of turns. But in the moment, and social media has given too many stupid people too many stupid platforms to say too much stupid shit. But it's like, I think a lot of people, because it doesn't directly affect them, have a way of not truly absorbing the weight of all this shit. And I think, unfortunately, it's become too normalized just seeing all this fuckery. I can go on for another 20, but that's all I got there. You
Here,
go
you
ahead.
want to know last thing, the crazy thing about our judicial system here in America, and we see how it's different in every state. If this shit would have happened somewhere, let's say Saudi Arabia or anywhere in the Middle East, he'd be beheaded. It would be a beheading. Many people would attend, and that's it. And you carry on
Yeah,
with
and
your life.
while I certainly don't agree with that result either, I do think there has to be a happy medium with a little more accountability because, like I said, yeah, going to jail and shit. I mean, dude, white boy Rick never hurt nobody. The motherfucker was like an informant, and he was in the drug game on a smaller level. That dude got sentenced at age 16, a non-violent crime, being a drug dealer. That dude got
Yeah.
out like a year or two ago. You look at the dudes that BMF is based on. Well, that might have been a little more rough, but the point is that I don't know, dude. To me, it's like
It's an unfortunate,
the
shitty
system.
situation.
The system is a trip, man. Because I say this too. Jail is a business. That's a whole nother convo. Jail is definitely a business, but I don't think it's a business that applies the same to everyone. I'm going to take it past racial relations and racial appearance and the way that people of color in this country, because I can go on a tangent about that. But one thing I will say is when you are a professional athlete and when you are making six figures, I think you jump off of that issue. Now it's a money thing.
Yeah,
Look at
no,
what look at what OJ Simpson was able to pull off. And he didn't even pay any of those fucking lawyers.
Speaking of OJ, if there's one thing I will say about OJ is don't be putting your
Elaborate,
input.
Zappy, elaborate, because
I mean,
this kind of got a chuckle out of me too.
For OJ to come out and say I don't agree with the sentencing that Henry Ruggs got, he should have got more. It's kind of like, dude, you're the last person,
On the
especially
planet.
in the NFL. Well, definitely in the NFL brotherhood, that should be speaking. But yes, on the planet, because everyone knows what really happened. It's just when you're able to hire the likes of a Johnny Cochran in that team, you're going to get off. Which goes back to the whole money spectrum.
Look at
But
this
yeah,
here, and she's right. There are folks in jail for weed longer than this.
yes, that's
And
that's the
believe me,
unfortunate
there
thing.
are worse cases than this too. I'm not absolving Ruggs. There's worse shit than this too. But the point is like a young person died who was only a couple of years older than him. He still has a chance at life, and don't rule it out. He still might have a chance to play football. If he gets out in 3 years, that is very feasible.
No, he'll
All
definitely
right,
be strong.
KD and GOAT in the same sentence. Our take. I'm going to make it short and sweet on my end. Kevin Durant was recently speaking about himself because he loves talking in the third person. Many narcissists kind of do enjoy that. And he recently said that if it wasn't for injuries, he would be viewed as the greatest of all time in basketball. And I'm just like, okay, where do I start? Dude, let's talk about your peers before we even talk about all the other guys. Steph Curry did it without you and before you and did it without you after you. So you're not above that guy. You're not above LeBron because LeBron, while we can get on him all day long about him set jumping and going to different organizations, he has won everywhere he's been. So you ain't better than him either. And these are the guys in your era. Do we want to go further into guys that stayed with one team like the Jordans and the Duncans and the Kobes and those kind of guys? Okay, I didn't think we did. Kevin Durant, similar to the advice that Zappy gave Henry, OJ Simpson. I'm going to say this to you. Shut up. You're a great scorer. I have no problem calling you a generational scorer. But you, and absolutely no way can you even, mean this, bro. The GOAT?
No way, because here, I'm going to put it to you this way. What separates LeBron, Larry Bird, and Scottie Pippen from Kevin Durant?
Well, for one, they all played both sides of the ball.
Bingo. That's exactly what I'm going with. All of these players have had some sort of first team or second team All NBA.
Pippen is the third worst player on the list because Magic and Bird on many people's list are both top 5. But this is the thing to show Pippen's greatness. Even though he's the third best out of the guys you mentioned, he still locked down Magic Johnson.
He was a 9-time All NBA first team
absolutely
player.
And if you look at it through that lens, that's a short list. You're talking in the guys of like a Gary Payton, a Michael Jordan, a Scottie Pippen, those kind of caliber defenders. And that's another thing I tell about a lot of people that never saw Jordan play or recency bias, or they talk this shit on LeBron. Like, say what you want about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is one of the most phenomenal defenders that ever played the 2-guard position.
And it was
he has almost as many All NBA defensive awards as he does scoring titles. He was the total package.
And it was all because I believe his second year, I cannot remember what reporter said something to him, but it was along the lines of, yeah, you're a great offensive player, but you play no defense. What did he do? He came back the next year and won Defensive Player of the Year. He came back the next year, and that's where he started his dominance as a two-way player. KD has never played defense. And then I'll go one up. He's like here, Ray Allen, who we all know was a teammate of LeBron, in my opinion, was the guy that saved LeBron's finals when they were playing the Spurs. I blame that on Pop for taking out Duncan.
I agree all the day with that.
Anyways, Ray Allen said it best when he was talking to someone and the guy was saying LeBron is the GOAT. And Ray Allen said, what is LeBron the GOAT of? Is he the GOAT of scoring? Is he the GOAT of assists? Like, what are you trying to reference it? You know? So I asked KD this, what exactly do you think you're the GOAT of? You're not the greatest shooter. That award belongs to Steph Curry. I mean, what Steph Curry has done behind the arc is just phenomenal. He's not the greatest defensive player. Yeah, he's a tall wing player that can get to the basket. I will give you that. But we're seeing that a lot more nowadays. He might have been what started the transition to big men playing the way they do. Why we see a Victor Wembanyama coming in as a guy that can handle the ball like a point. I will give KD credit in that department that he did introduce a new style of basketball where the big man now can shoot the three, can drive the ball, and things like that. But in no way, shape, or form, even if he was somewhat of a better defender, I still couldn't put him in the GOAT conversation when he's not even in the top 3 of his position, whether it's small forward or power forward. He's not in the top 3 of either one.
And yeah, to me, it's just, yeah, it's all true what you said, but I think the conversation or the consideration literally ends when you say that he is not the defender of the other 3 men you named, the Bird or a Pippen or a Jordan or a, Magic Johnson, other guys. Like, no.
And if you know what, and if he was, that we might be talking about KD, the 5-time or 6-time NBA champ, because when you're a part of a team that consisted of Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Ibaka, I mean, that team was stacked. They should have won a few championships, but they didn't because not one of those players really plays D. And then we talk about him. He had to go to the Warriors to get his. He goes to Brooklyn, same situation. All they had to do was play some defense against the Bucks, and they're going to win that series. They didn't do that. He relies too heavily on his ability to score, and for that reason alone, I just don't put him as a top.
No. You got to be a two-way player to have that kind of consideration. We're coming up on the 6-minute mark. I want to hit on this briefly. Giants and Lions plus other games around the NFL preseason. I'm going to say this off the rip. I like what I saw out of Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito. Hey, is that Danny DeVito's son? Just wondering.
No, he's
I know it's not. He's way too tall to be Danny DeVito's son.
Wasn't Danny DeVito like dropping like comments on here recently? I don't know, whatever.
Possibly.
Anyway,
Brett,
no. I like what I saw out of him. Preseason, I'm never one to overanalyze much unless if there's truly a position battle, and there are a couple on my team. For me, it stays super simple. It's always about I just want guys to stay healthy. But I will say this: the meaningful minutes of this football game, which are when higher depth chart guys played, I think the Giants outplayed the Lions today. Ultimately, the Giants didn't win the game, but that's very minimal. on who looked better tonight in certain junctures. I actually think the Giants look better tonight, and I'm happy about that because I do have a decent amount of respect for the Lions program going into this year.
Yeah, it's really hard to say what you see with a team because really in the preseason it's such a basic playbook for one, and of course we don't really get the whole story because either one team or both teams are not necessarily playing their starters, yet alone even their second stringers. Like
You
they're
don't want to show too much.
You don't know, absolutely. You don't want film to be established from preseason. That's the one thing. You don't want there to be any type of film. Preseason to me nowadays, I shouldn't be seeing Patrick Mahomes start tomorrow, but I get it. I like Andy Reid's concept. Get him in the flow, get him used to getting ready for game day. Have him play 2 series, great. Fine with that. But you still
like
run
the
the risk
concept.
of injury.
Yeah, you like the concept all you want. I wasn't feeling the concept when Aziz Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau got hurt before the season opener. I wasn't happy about that.
And that's the scary part of it. And not only that, they're not getting paid during preseason. They get
Dude,
paid
when
during the
I saw
regular season.
when I saw Eli get bloody in the Jet preseason game, I was like, nah, dude, come on.
I mean, I saw the 2016 season in which Dallas had high hopes, and I saw Tony Romo get his back broken in the preseason versus the Seattle Seahawks. Granted, we were lucky enough to have drafted Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott that year.
But it is pretty remarkable that I got a giant one for you. Jason Sehorn returning kicks. That was against the Jets. Oh, I was furious.
Yeah, that's the other part of it is when they're toying with the ideas of putting this player at that, especially punt return, kick return. When you're a star player, at no point should you be back there. Just like the way I am.
Dude, Sehorn was never the same after that. He was still good, but he was never the same. Look, last year, Adoree Jackson, and this is a regular season game, Adoree Jackson getting hurt, I believe it was against the Lions, on a friggin' punt return. Adoree Jackson, our cornerback, won. I'm like, guys, we can't find somebody else that we can put out here for this?
Yeah, and Adoree was good at that in college when he was at
USC. I get it. I use him in Madden on that, but that's Madden.
Yeah, no, and then you don't do that with your star players. You don't do that. You that's why you go and sign that guy with speed that can field the ball because of that exact reason. And he might have some good field vision too. But when if I see CeeDee Lamb returning a punt, I'm like, it's not his rookie year. Just like Des Bryant returned punts his rookie year, and that was it. Then they established themselves as true number one receivers, and then they never went back there again. At no point should we be talking about a Jason Sehorn or a Adoree Jackson or Trayvon Diggs or whatever the case. These guys going back there and returning punts or kicks, you just don't do it because that's still the most dangerous play in the NFL: the kick return and punt return.
And to the point about why it's wise not to play your starters, you basically we covered all of that. But this is what makes me happy. I'm looking at the stat sheet now, and it's minimal guys that are starters, super minimal. This is what I want to see. Not to mention that's where the position battles are won. You know who your main guys are going to be, with the exception maybe one or two, like in the Giants case, just putting it out there. The true question marks, who's going to win the slot receiver, battles, the running back 3, because running back 1 is Saquon, running back 2 is Matt Breida for now. Who's going to win running back 3? That's always good. That's going to be a competition. And maybe, dare I say, who's going to win cornerback 2? Is Banks going to be the guy off the jump, or is someone else gonna grab that? These are position battles that happen, and you always get these interesting ones where we talked about running backs. We talked about why running backs, especially now with the pay issues, more times have all the reason to not be on the field. But we said certain contracts have ruined it for future guys. Also, certain performance. Who started the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs last year? That running back.
Oh, Pacheco.
What round was he taken in?
7th round, sir.
And once again, the beat goes on, and this is another conversation that I'm sure we're going to get into, possibly as soon as the next hour, because 30 seconds. Go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say, hey, we all know, I don't think we recently said it, but Russell Wilson, him and his wife, they are expecting a child. But hey, him and Jerry Judy look pretty good. Russell, they're riding right now.
So they're expecting a child in the future?
In the future.
Yes, sir.